Today we're going to talk about composite shapes. Composite shapes, what are composite shapes? Well, composite shapes are shapes that are put together. So individually we've learned shapes, and now we're going to learn how to solve them when they're put together and they're composite, okay, more than one. All right, so really quick, let's review our formulas. So first of all, we have our square. Square is base times height, or base times height, or since if you have a square that's 4 by 4, you would say that base times height is 4 times 4. So you could also say that the formula is side squared. Okay? Because 4 times 4 is the same thing as saying 4 squared. So one side squared will give you the area of a square. Okay. Rectangle. Again, base times height, or we could write it base times height. Okay. Then we have parallelogram. Oh my gosh. Parallel. Where's my whiteout? Parallel. And a parallelogram is the same thing. It's base times height, or base times height with a dot. Okay? All right, then after we finish parallelograms, we learn triangles. And triangles are, remember, they're half of a parallelogram. So triangles are base times height divided by 2. And then after we learned those, then we went on to trapezoids. And that was height times base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. Okay? I hate crossouts. They drive me crazy. Now, if you did not just write these all down on a piece of paper so that you have a cheat sheet, you should pause the video and do that now. I will also post a picture of this so that you can go ahead and do that as well. Okay? All right, so those are our formulas. We need to remember those formulas individually because they're going to help us solve composite shapes together when the shapes are put together, okay? So the best way to learn this is to just kind of take a look at some composite shapes and then start trying to solve them, okay? So let's look at our first one right here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so number 1. This is kind of the shape of a house. And if you look at the bottom, it's a rectangle. And if you look at the top, it's a triangle. So we have to solve 2 shapes to get the area of this whole polygon. Okay? So we have to solve a triangle. And we have to solve a rectangle. And then we have to add them together. Okay? So on a separate piece of paper. Oh no, I thought I had a piece of paper right here. Sorry. Okay, so on a separate piece of paper, just to make it neat, we're going to solve it. Ready? Okay. For the triangle, we have a base. And I don't have a number right here, but I can look at the rest of the shape and see if there's a line that is the same length. And so I can tell that this line is the same length as this line. So that means I could go ahead and say that that is also 9 inches, that line. Okay, so my base of the triangle is 9, and my height is right here, 2. Divided by 2. And then I have my rectangle. And my base is 9, same base, 9. And my height for the rectangle is 3. It's on the side over here, 3. Okay. Excuse me. So 9 times 2 is 18. Divided by 2 is 9. Plus, now I got to do my rectangle. 9 times 3 is 27. So 9 plus 27 is 36 inches squared for the whole shape. That's the area for the whole shape. All right, let's take a look at number 2. For number 2, you have 3 shapes there. Okay? For number 2, you have a triangle, a square, and a rectangle. Okay? So that means for number 2, we're going to be solving 3 shapes. We're going to solve a triangle plus a square plus a rectangle. Okay? So for the triangle, let's solve the triangle. The triangle, base times height divided by 2. So the base of my triangle is from this corner of the triangle to this corner of the triangle. They told me it's 8 centimeters. The height, there isn't one marked here, but I can see that this line, obviously, since it's part of the square, is also the same size as this one. So then I know it's 4 divided by 2. 8 times 4 is 32. Divided by 2 is 16. So the triangle is 16 units squared. We'll just say units. It's really centimeters, but okay. So 16 plus, now I got to do the square. I've got a square that has a side of 4 centimeters. So remember, I could do 4 times 4 for base times height, or I could do 4 squared. That's the same thing. Okay? So 4 times 4 is 16. Now I need my rectangle. Rectangle is 12 on the base times 4. 12 times 4 is 48. And then I have to add them all. I have to take 16, 16, and 48 and add them all. 8 plus 6 is 14, plus 6 is 20. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 80 centimeters square. Okay, hopefully that's making sense. Okay, so on this one, number 3, when you look at it, you should see 2 shapes. You might accidentally see some triangles in there, but you shouldn't be seeing triangles. Overall, you should see that this is a parallelogram and this is a parallelogram. So you've got 2 parallelograms. All right? So I've got to do P plus P. All right, parallelogram number 1. Remember, this right here is your parallelogram. This is number 1. Okay, so parallelogram is base times height. My base is 4.5. And my height, remember it's this line right here that we have to use for the height, is 3. Okay, so then I come over here. I'm going to do some side math. I'm going to do 4.5 times 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry 1. 3 times 4 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. And then I count my decimals. Remember, I have one number behind the decimal, so it's 13.5. So parallelogram number 1 is 13.5. And then I'm going to add the second parallelogram. Okay, so again, that's base times height. And for the second parallelogram, let me use a different colored pen. For the second parallelogram, I'm looking at this shape. Okay, so my base is 4.5. And my height is this line right here. So that's 2. So doing side math, I already know this in my head. 4.5 times 2 equals 9. And then I need to remember to add them. I always have to remember to add them. So 13.5 plus 9 is 22.5 feet squared. That's my answer. All right, we're not going to do number 4 on this worksheet because number 4 is a triangle, and you guys should be able to recognize that, okay? Now I want to look at this one. I'm going to fold my paper so I have more room. Now I want to look at this one. Number 5. Number 5 is a problem that you might see on an EOG or a test or something. And they have it all set up so that you can recognize that there's 3 different shapes here. There's a triangle, there's a square, and then there's another triangle. Okay? Now here's the thing. If you've been paying attention for the last week or so when we've been learning all our area problems, then you should be able to recognize that you don't have to break this one up. You don't have to decompose this composite shape because it's already all 3 shapes put together form one of our base shapes. Remember, our base shapes are square, rectangle, triangle, trapezoid. So this one forms a trapezoid. But the trick is you have to do a little bit of math so that you can make sure that you get this right. So remember, a trapezoid is height times base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. Okay? So now, here's the thing. I've got 1 for the base of this triangle and 1 for the base of this triangle. So that's 2, and I have to add it to the 2.5. So I have to add all of this together to get the base for base 1. So that's actually 4.5. Okay? And then for this one up here, I don't have a measurement written, but look, this line is the same length as this line, isn't it? So I know that it's the same. It's 2.5. Now, I've got to get my height. Remember, the height is from the bottom to the top of the trapezoid. Bottom to top. So this one right here is my height. Okay? So my height is 2.5. And then it's all divided by 2. Okay, so let's do a little quickie math here. 4.5 plus 2.5 is going to give me 7. So now I'm going to come to the side. I'm going to go 2.5, because remember I have to multiply it by 2.5 now, times 7. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 3, 15, 16, 17. And remember to count your decimal places. I have 1. So it's 17.5. So now I have 17.5, but I can't forget that I still have to divide by 2. Okay? So I'm going to come over here, and I've got 17.5 divided by 2. 2 goes into 17 8 times. That gives me 16, leaves me 1. I bring down my 5. Remember, my decimal is going to be there. 2 goes into 15 7 times. That gives me 14, leaves me 1. Oops, sorry, I ran out of space. And remember, I bring down a 0 so I can continue, right? 2 goes into 10 5 times. That gives me 10 and leaves me with 0. So I know that this is my answer. Now you could also have done it on a calculator. That would be fine, the math part. But you should be able to do that by hand because we know how to do all of that. Okay? All right, let's look at this composite shape. It looks kind of like an L, but really it's just made up of 3 squares. So when you have a composite shape that's a bunch of squares, I'm going to give you the shortcut. Ready? You've got 1 square, 2 square, 3 square. Okay? All 3 squares have a side that's 6, so it's telling you that it's definitely 6 times 6, right? So you've got side squared times 3. So side squared would be 6 squared times 3, because that's the length of the side. And then 6 squared is 6 times 6, so that's 36 times 3. And then you got to remember you've got to do 36 times 3. 3 times 6 is 18. Carry 1, 9, 10. So your answer is 108 meters squared. All right, I have another worksheet that's got a couple of problems that I want to show you on it. So on this worksheet, we have a couple more composite shapes. And on this one, there's this one that I like. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger again, which means my handwriting's going to get even bigger. Okay, so we're looking at this guy right here. And what I want you to recognize is that this one, you can do it several different ways. Okay, so one of the ways is you could, I don't think my yellow will show up on that. Let's see if purple will show up. Okay, one of the ways is you could decide to do this. Okay, so you could decide to do this rectangle, and then you have 2 of these rectangles and 2 of these rectangles. But that's having to solve 3 different shapes, and that's kind of a pain in the butt. So because you would have to solve this one, which would be rectangle 1, let's say rectangle 1, but this is also rectangle 1, so that means I've got times 2. So rectangle 1 times 2. Then you have this one, which is rectangle 2. Same thing, they're the same, so that means I've got to do rectangle 2 times 2. And then this middle one right here is rectangle 3. So technically I'd have to solve 3 rectangles, okay? But I have to remember to do multiplication in there too to make sure I've counted 5 rectangles. Okay, then there's another way to look at it. Now this might get a little messy, but instead of putting these lines in right here, we're just going to look at the red lines now, okay? So I could just go straight across, and instead of cutting, I'm going to do this. So I've got this whole big rectangle, which is going to be now rectangle 1. And then I have these 2 smaller rectangles, which will be rectangle 2 times 2. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to say think smarter, not harder. This is definitely less work than this, so I would go with this. Okay, that's how I would solve it. Can you get to the same answer with this? Yes, you absolutely can. And if that's what came to your mind and you're taking the EOG and that's the only way that's coming to your mind, then do it. Definitely do it. Don't sit there and say, right, Mrs. Rodriguez said to do something, and then waste 10 minutes trying to remember what I said to do, okay? do what comes to your mind, but I'm showing you the way that should be easier for you, okay? All right, so when I look at this, now I'm going to do this big rectangle. So I'm doing this guy, this big rectangle, the red, okay? So that rectangle, I have to get part over here is 1. And so if this part is 1, that means this part is 1. So that's 2. And then I need this wide part. That's 4. So my base is 6. And then my height is right here times 3. So that part's going to equal 18. Now I've got to do my 2 rectangles. So over here I know my base is 1. My height is 3. And, oops, I'm sorry. My bad. I'm looking at the wrong rectangles because of all those colors. I'm so sorry. It is similar, but sorry. Now I'm trying to look at these rectangles over here. Okay? So when I look for that, this is my base, 4 times 1. But remember, I have to multiply it times 2 because I have 2 of them. So 4 times 1 is 4, times 2 is 8. Now I have to add my 2 totals together. 18 plus 8, 26. So this is 26, and it doesn't give us a size, so it's units squared. Okay, sorry about that one. That one's kind of messy and hard to illustrate. Now we're going to come over to this triangle. Well, arrow, sorry. Okay, so on this arrow, we have a triangle and we have a rectangle, okay? When you look at this, you should recognize that if I draw a line from here to here, and I add this line and that line, I have a triangle, okay? But I have to also remember that they're not giving me the measurement for this section of the line because it's not there. It's just there in my head. I made the line. So I have to figure out what measurement is that line. Well, this line from here to here measures the same as this line right here. So I can take that 5 and put it over here. All right, then now I have to figure out what's my height of the triangle, because I can't use this 12 because the 12 covers the height from the base of the rectangle to the triangle. So what I need to do is I need to take the 12 and subtract the length of the 9, the side, okay? 12 minus 9 is 3. So the height, if I turn it, is 3. Okay? So now I'm solving a rectangle and a triangle, and I'm adding them together. My rectangle is, this is 9 times 5. Okay? And that should be 45. Okay? Then my triangle is base, I have to add the 2.5 plus 5 is 7.5 plus 2.5 is 10 times, remember we found 3 for our height, divided by 2. So 10 times 3 is 30, divided by 2 is 15. Now I have to add this, and I will get 60 units squared. Okay, so I know that this is confusing just because of the fact that sometimes you have to hunt for the different lengths. But technically, you didn't learn anything new. You already knew how to do rectangles, squares, parallelograms, triangles, and trapezoids. You knew how to solve all of those already. and you know how to do all of the math, the multiplying and the dividing and the decimals and stuff, and possibly you might see one with fractions. So you know how to do all of that. Really, the hardest part of this is trying to make sure that you have the right measurements for your shapes, okay? And that's where I really want you to focus in today's practice, okay? So go do your practice activity and really try and focus on where are you pulling your measurements from to solve your composite shapes, okay? And focus on trying to select the least amount of shapes to solve your composite shape, okay? Alrighty, guys, you're on your own.